But really, it's the habits and the mindset that are so, so important. Whether you're investing in Bitcoin or not, or what you think is going to happen with Tesla, like that isn't as important as the habits.
Welcome to the Teacher Money Show, the podcast dedicated to helping teachers navigate your unique financial challenges and unlock your financial superpowers. I'm your host, Shaun Morgan, a full-time teacher. That's right, I teach every day just like you, and personal financial coach. And I'm here to help every teacher, whether you're a seasoned teacher looking for fresh insights or a new educator navigating your first paycheck, to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life. The contents of this podcast are informational in nature and are not legal or tax advice, and neither I nor my guests are engaged in the provision of legal, tax, or any other advice. You should not act upon this information without first seeking appropriate advice from an accountant, financial planner, lawyer, or other professional. Today, we have an awesome guest. We're going to be talking to the founder of The Awesome Stuff. So the founder of The Awesome Stuff, David Delisle, is an Amazon best-selling author, entrepreneur, real estate investor, speaker, and most importantly, a dad. He's a contributor to Entrepreneur, Yahoo News, Go Banking Rates, Money Club, and so much more. But most importantly, we're going to be talking today about his book, a graphic novel called The Golden Quest. And it offers us a new way to think about money by noticing the weight of our words, choices, actions, and the world around us. David teaches kids and adults how to live a richer life, just like what we do here, richer wallet, classroom, and life. We're on the same page there, and create the freedom for what is most important to them, the awesome stuff. And I'm super excited to talk about the awesome stuff. But before we do that, David, how's it going?
It's so good. I'm super excited about this as well. And yeah, I can't wait. We're going to have fun.
I'm super excited. So let's just dive right on in with the awesome stuff. So I met David at FinCon, which is a conference where you can learn about how to help more people hear your message when it comes to financial literacy. And we just connected there, and we had an awesome conversation about the awesome stuff. And when we talked, I had this great mindset shift when you explained the awesome stuff to me. So because I love the way you explain it, can you share with the audience what you mean by the awesome stuff?
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things where, again, when people hear it, they're like, oh, this is sort of for kids. And yeah, the awesome stuff, I get it. I like awesome things too. And it is that, but just like all these sort of, messages that seem simple at first, and the more you dive into them, they aren't. That's what I'm trying to sort of really get to the essence of with the awesome stuff. So the awesome stuff is really understanding what's important to you, what lights you up, and bring awareness to that. Because I think a lot of us think we know what we like or what we want to buy or what we're doing, but we rarely pause to think about it. And it's one of those things where you can feel it in your body, like one of those things where you start to light up. And what I love with kids is they get this almost instantly. They get it before us adults, because you start talking to them. If we're any parent listening in on this podcast right now, they know if they lost like their favorite stuffy or something to their kids at a hotel, or there was a fire and they had to grab something, they know those one or two items that those kids just cherish and can't live without. Kids know those things. We as adults sometimes sort of forget about that. And the awesome stuff is really, really trying to get back to what's important to us, and knowing that it's individual, and knowing that all of us have different things that are important to us.
That's so important to realize that even as adults, even though we don't have a special stuffy, we do have the awesome stuff, the things that really matter to us. And those are the important things that we need to focus on when we're trying to think of what matters in life. So I really wanted to talk to you about your book. Now I've got it right here. This book, The Golden Quest. I got a copy from you at FinCon, and I brought it home and I immediately read it with my kids, and they loved it. Okay, it's a graphic novel, everybody. If you're on YouTube, I'm going to show you a picture. If not, well, I'll post a picture from the book on the show notes, which you can find at teachermoneyshow.com/podcast. All of our show notes are there. but they're beautiful pages, beautiful artwork here. And it's like a magical world with all sorts of cool, colorful things going on. But it's teaching us about money. It's fun, but it's teaching us about money. So, like, how did you make learning about money fun?
It's funny. Well, it. I mean, for me, I'm a money nerd. That's why going to FinCon, it's just like I'm a kid in a candy store. Like I could talk about this stuff all day long. And I always liked this stuff. I liked this stuff when I was like 10 years old. I was reading finance books. But I recognize that most people don't like learning about this stuff or talking about it. And so as my boys got older, I was like, how do I teach them about this? How do I make this fun? And I remember I was volunteering at my children's school library and just watching the kids read these graphic novels, and the poor librarian trying to convince the kids to like not just check out graphic novels. And I was like, why not make this really fun? Take this subject that people don't like and make it fun. Make it this fun adventure, make the lessons easy, take all the math out of it. And I think that's the thing, is like looking back, I love this stuff and I am a money nerd, but really it's the habits and the mindset that are so important. Whether you're investing in Bitcoin or not, or what you think is going to happen with Tesla, like that isn't as important as the habits. So these lessons are actually pretty simple and anyone can get them. And the stuff that usually scares us away from financial literacy, or even just the term financial literacy, where people like their eyes roll and their eyes gloss over, they don't want to listen to it. It really doesn't have to be that. It could be as simple as just setting this up, some simple habits that you don't have to think about, and money will stop being something that we struggle with.
I love that quote, that little nugget right there. Math is not as important as the habits. The habits are really, really key. I mean, like, it doesn't matter how, like, mathematically compound interest works for you in your daily life. What matters is that you are investing in something that's compounding and that you have that habit built. Whether or not you understand the mathematics behind it, it can still work in your favor if you have the habit in place that's going to allow you to take control of that mathematical principle of compound interest. So the habits are really what is key.
Yeah. Well, and what most people don't realize is that the majority of people who invest don't actually know what they're invested in. Like very few people actually know what they're invested in. So when that millionaire next door talks about their investments and how well it's done for them, most of those people don't know what they're invested in. And it doesn't matter. The habits matter. So, focus on what's easy that everyone can grasp. And if you love this stuff, then yeah, dive into it, but you don't have to.
Yeah, that's great. The investing piece is only one piece, though. So in your book, you have these four golden rules. So I'm going to look at the back of the book here because you have this beautiful scroll here in the back that just explains all of them for us. And the golden rules are like incredibly simple, guys. So golden rule number 1, only buy the awesome stuff. Golden rule number 2, always save first. Golden rule number 3, send your savings to work today. And golden rule number 4, give and you'll have more. So those are the four golden rules. What do these rules mean? And why did you choose these specific rules?
So again, I want to talk about macroeconomics and interest rates and stock markets and all these things, but it doesn't matter. And having invested for most of my life and looking back, it doesn't matter. So if I really distill it to what's important and what I wanted my boys to learn, this is it. Like these really are for kids and adults. And they do sound simple and they're meant to be simple because it's meant to be something a 5-year-old could grasp. But as adults, if we follow these rules, they really will set us up. So if I walk you through them, that awesome stuff, and I just touched on it briefly, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's so important because that's your entire mindset shift. If you don't understand what's important to you and you are constantly just focused on more money and just the next plateau, it doesn't matter how much you earn, You will always be chasing more. I've seen it over and over again. It doesn't matter if you have a $100,000 net worth or a $10 million net worth. If all you know is more, you're just chasing. And we see that. We see it with millionaires and billionaires, our celebrities, they're chasing. And so this awesome stuff, even though it sounds simple, it's how to break that chase. So I'm just going to take a real quick aside on that because this mindset piece is so important. And this is the first rule because I think it's so important. And I think like as a parent, if we picture our kids having that, temper tantrum because they want an ice cream cone, and then whatever we say as parents typically is not the right thing because we're going to teach them all sorts of the wrong things. We're going to teach them lack, like it's, we can't afford it or it's too much. We're going to tell if we only had this, we're going to make up any story we want. The awesome stuff is framing this back to that same child, 5-year-old, 10-year-old, us as adults, and just posing the question, is that your awesome stuff? And in that process, being forced to just pause and reflect and just consider, is this really what's important to me? That practice, it doesn't matter what the answer is after that question. The answer doesn't matter. Asking that question, that process will shift everything. In the same way, when we get a parent to really pause and like, I just want more time with my kids. And then you look at their buying behavior and their spending habits and realize it doesn't align with what they actually want. That pause and reflection will change everything. Like you said, that mindset shift. So that's huge. And then I get into some basic habits for just creating wealth. They'll always save first. I think you had an episode recently on this. Or I think I saw it on Instagram. It's really hard for us to save and budget. It's not how we're programmed. So the idea of saving first and building it as a habit that we don't think about, then it just becomes something that happens. It's the same as brushing our teeth, or when someone brings you something to the table and you say thank you. We just get into these habits and we don't even realize it. That's what saving first becomes. Get rid of the budgets, get rid of spreadsheets, get rid of everything. That's going to help with everything. That's going to start your path to actually accumulating wealth. And it's massive. And then the investing part, without compound growth, like you said, you don't have to understand the mechanics, but investing gives you compound growth. And it's massive. Like any scenario you run that's a compound growth story typically blows people's minds because we just do not think that way. And it accelerates and grows so fast. It's incredible. And then after that, this giving concept, because in being rich, having money, all of these things, there's an energy to it. And a lot of it is perspective. And we don't realize how important that perspective is. And so in giving, it's very difficult to not feel rich. But also there's a massive power in it. I mean, like us meeting at FinCon and like giving you the book, and now I'm here doing a talk. Like there's an energy to it because people want to help other people that help them. And there just is an energy to it. And so I wanted to illustrate that not only is giving the right thing to do, it actually, from a selfish standpoint, will make you richer. And there's studies that show that. So that's why these things are so important to me. And they sound simple, but if even as an adult, if this is all you did and all you learned, your financial freedom is almost guaranteed.
I love that. That was a beautiful overview of the rules. And I think we need to dive into each of them just a bit more as we go. So I want to circle back around to the awesome stuff, which is, your bread and butter. It's just what you talk about. It's the name of your website, right? And that question, is this your awesome stuff? I was able to use this recently with my kids, and it was powerful. My kids have been, ever since my wife brought it up, every time they bring like some money and like they find a quarter, like, oh, we have a quarter, maybe we can get a dog now. They really want a dog. I don't want a dog at the moment because we have other priorities. And I was saying before I met David, we can't afford a dog, and like, oh, that's why they're like, oh, I have another quarter. Can we afford a dog now? They have that lack mentality. But then after reading the book with them, I said, well, we could buy a dog right now. We could, but is it our awesome stuff? And then I explained to them that my wife's about to go back to college and that we need the money to send her to college. So I told them that my awesome stuff right now is sending mom back to college and not paying for a dog. And they said, oh, okay. They just got it, right? It made sense. because of this reframing of the mind. They still want a dog, of course, and they still bring it up, but they understand that it's not we're too poor or we can't. It's that we're choosing not to because there's other things that are higher priorities for us. And that just it just with the explanation of the awesome stuff, it made sense to them. So I highly recommend that you use this in your own life. Even if you don't have kids, ask yourself before you buy something, is this my awesome stuff? Okay, granted, buying toilet paper is not necessarily your awesome stuff, but it's your, staying alive stuff. So that's important. But like there are, those expenses that aren't, necessary, but is it your awesome stuff? And that's what you have to consider. But you said it's not everyone knows what it is. So how could somebody, say a teacher or anybody, identify their awesome stuff?
I love that. I mean, just hearing the story gave me chills because that really is the power in it, because you took the same scenario, not getting a dog for your kids. And in one scenario, these kids are growing up with this feeling of either lack or, or jealousy or whatever it might be, but all these negative emotions that come along with, I can't get a dog because, and then internalizing those emotions, that feeling, versus the empowerment of, I choose not to get a dog because I want mom to go back to school. Like, just pause, and the outcome's the same, but just really let that sink in. That's massive. And as a lesson for your kids, you could feel the trajectory of their lives and how they view the world and how they just, their gratitude, how much that's going to shift with that mindset. So it's incredible. Now, to get back to your question with how to know, a lot of times, and this is what I love about it, it's going to change and evolve. And you're not always going to get it right. And it doesn't matter if you don't get it right. Like, that pause and reflection's a big point of it. Like, I hear people all the time, well, what if I picked the wrong thing? Or what if it's really the awesome stuff? Or the children bought this thing and was stupid. It doesn't matter. Like, the pause and reflection, that is the lesson. Same with like meditation. It's not being this Zen monk. It's the practice of coming back, just coming back and coming back to the present. So just asking that, so that your kids will notice, and even as adults will notice, hey, I think my awesome stuff is, this pair of shoes or this new car or this vacation. And then after that, we realize it wasn't like, I'm not even thinking about it. It fell flat. Or this is 2 years later, and I still, every time I put on this pair of shoes or this shirt or think about that trip and look at the photos, I light up. So it's a feeling. We recognize that feeling. We all know it. We might get it wrong, but we all know the things that we love the most, the things that, we bought 5 years ago and still love, and the things that we bought and never, pulled out of the closet or never wore or never used or never did anything with. And it's just a process. That's the thing, is it's a process, but start with recognizing the feeling. Think of, what are your favorite things? What are your favorite memories? What are your favorite experiences? When I talk to you, what gets you excited? And you just start lighting out, leaning in. You can feel it in your body. And then that becomes your current bar. Anything else that falls short of that isn't your awesome stuff. You've already found something you like more. And that's going to constantly change. But just that awareness, it's as simple as that. It's just an awareness.
Yeah, and I love how you said that the question is actually more valuable than whatever you end up buying, because that reflection moment is really going to help you determine whether or not you want to spend that money in the first place. And sometimes you'll make a mistake and buy something that's not your awesome stuff, and you're like, well, I guess I shouldn't have bought that. Oh well. But just taking that time to pause and reflect will change your mindset. It'll change your spending habits, and it'll help you to move on to the next step, which is saving, right? But it's save first. So we need to understand that principle. But if you've read The Richest Man in Babylon, the first step in that book is, 10% of all you have is yours to keep. So his first step is your second step. Can you just, as you're getting on to the second step and why that's so important, speak to why the awesome stuff comes before the first step in other traditional financial wisdom?
I think most financial wisdom is how to have more money. And if your goal is how to have more money, saving is the first step. And that's why I push the awesome stuff so much. And we've really talked about it. It's because it's the thing that we typically don't talk about when we talk about financial literacy or money in general. And if we're only thinking about how to have more money, I can almost guarantee you that journey will never end, and you'll never have enough, and you'll never reach this final point where you have enough money and you're done. No one has ever reached a point where they're like, I've got it. I'm done. I was chasing, and I finally achieved it, and I'm good. And the chase is over. Or if that's all they know, that's when depression and unhappiness sinks in because that chase is over. So this mindset piece really is big because like we said, so with your kids and this instance, one instance with the right mindset, they are empowered and they made a choice and a decision that they want their mom to go to school instead of having a dog. And they're not even worried about it anymore. Doesn't mean they don't want a dog. It's they know what's important to them and they've made that decision. So that's massive. And that without that mindset shift, it doesn't matter. They want the dog and they want two dogs and they want something else and they want something else. And it was just, you would just keep chasing forever. And so for me, understanding why you want money in the first place and understanding that step is the only way to actually break that cycle of chasing for more and endless consumerism.
And just as a side note for teachers, teachers often unfortunately have a mentality of like, I'm supposed to be poor because I'm a teacher. I'm not supposed to have enough. But we're trying to change that mindset to, you are supposed to be rich, right? Teachers are supposed to be rich and have enough. But if you change the mindset, it's like swinging a pendulum from I'm supposed to be poor to I'm supposed to be rich, and then you never have enough. There does need to be an enough point. So I really like how it's starting with the frame of mind of what is enough for me. What do I want? So you have that end in mind, that goal in mind, and then once you get there, you can do all sorts of amazing things with it, which is what we'll get to here in a minute. But the way to get there is not saving, right? You have to save as your starting point, but just saving money isn't going to get you all the way to enough unless you are making way more money than anyone I know makes on a regular basis. So you have to send your savings to work today. That's investing. I feel like we're going to talk about investing a ton on this podcast in other episodes. So I don't necessarily want to get into the weeds of investing, because I think everyone understands you need to invest to grow your money. But do you have anything that you'd like to share about why you chose to send your savings to work today? Like, what's the significance of the way that you worded that?
It's to take advantage of compound interest, and that's it, especially when we're talking to young kids. But if you think of money, I mean, if you look at something like a 10% return, which is what the stock market's average. So again, I try not to talk about math in the book. I try not to talk about math when I talk to people. And that 10%, don't rely on that number, but that's not a far-fetched number. That's a very realistic return. If that's your return, your money's going to double every 7 years. So if you think of every 7 years, how fast it can be, you take someone like a Warren Buffett, who is, arguably one of our best investors and wealthiest people. A lot of that isn't because he's this amazing investor. It's because he's invested for so long. So if you take his entire wealth, all the decisions he's made, everything else, and assume a 10% return, and his money, his entire net worth over the next 7 years will double again. That's what we're talking about when we talk about compound interest. So it's massive, and you don't have to understand the investing. You can find financial advisors to help you, but getting that compound interest working for you, it's life changing.
And as a side note on that, I just had an interview with the millionaire educator Jerry Bourne. So we talked about his net worth hitting $1 million as a public school teacher, and he hit that number in 2016. Well, 2023 now, He has like a year by year what his net worth is on his blog. 7 years later, he's now at 2 million. So like this is a real life thing. It's not just like in a hypothetical world, like this really happens in real life. You can double your money every 7 years. Of course, past performance is not indicative of future gains, so on and so forth. But if historical returns hold, that's very doable. So it is important to start today. And I love how you actually have today in all capitalized letters, because like the best time to start is 20 years ago, but you couldn't. So start now, right? You always have to start right away. I really love how your last step is give and you'll have more. But that seems like an odd thing to include in a finance, like how to have more money. Although we just discussed how it's not necessarily more, but how to have enough money book. Like instead of like a more traditional advice, like diversify or make sure you have low fees, or some other advice that's really good advice. So why is giving specifically so important? It's specifically for the mindset that we're talking about.
Yeah, like for me, a lot of this is creating freedom. And to me, freedom is not having to worry or think about money. So it's not the things we can buy or accumulate, but it's where it just fades into the background as it's not a consideration in our choices. And so along with that, giving is so much part of that mindset, because if the whole goal is to not worry or think about money, there's no better way to not worry about money than to feel the power of giving and helping others. It's very hard to be in a lack mindset, to be in this state of not having enough and chasing and what if and chasing the Joneses and envy and all these things. If you're in a state of giving, all that fades away. And not only that, I want to also come up with some new, like a new way to think about things as well. So even though these are simple lessons, I want to have a different spin on it, a different perspective, just to bring some awareness to some other things. And usually when we think of giving, we think of it in the sense of charity and we're in a better position so we can help these others that are less fortunate. And that's sort of the standpoint that we typically take with giving. And I want to flip that. So it's not necessarily that they're less fortunate, these people we're helping, or we're superior in a better position, or we have more. It's just we can, and so we do. And whether we have more or we don't doesn't really matter. And whether we're better than this person or that we're not, like that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving from a state of empowerment where it's not, our typical frame of mind when we think of giving. And then with that as well, to show the power that giving is actually going to come back to you. So one of my favorite stories is this little boy who was like 7, and he sent me an email about going and taking a bunch of, clothes to a food, like a shelter. And on the way, he found 2 pennies. And it's a 7-year-old. So those 2 pennies meant so much to him. Like this is wealth. This is this rule immediately paying back to him. And in this email, you could feel the enthusiasm. He's like, I didn't even get to this place. I didn't even drop off all the things. And already I'm richer. Already I have 2 pennies. This is already working. And just again, imagine here's this child who believes the more he gives, the more he'll have and the richer he'll be. And that is his mindset. You can see that sticking with him for life and having such a big impact on just general happiness, how rich he is, and financially rich. I mean, if you give, it will come back to you. And that's why I try to illustrate in the book. Here's a scenario in the book where through giving, the person who gave actually not just, spiritually, but financially became richer. And again, not a far-fetched story because we see it. People who give tend to have more and earn more.
That such an amazing story. I love that story of the little 7-year-old boy, because I've got a boy who's 6 years old right now, and it's true. Finds a penny and he thinks he is on top of the world, like, so much money, I have a penny, and it's just that excitement of, I have received, and it doesn't have to be a lot. You just are receiving more as a result of giving. And I think that it's really important that we remember that giving to others uh, is not so much about what the other people receive, but about how it changes us. Someone who gave me some fantastic advice said, if you do everything to become massively wealthy, but you don't give, you're going to rot your soul. And I truly believe that the reason that there's a lot of people who are really wealthy who do not have, good lives, who are miserable or unhappy, is because they haven't given meaningfully, right? Giving because you want to have the tax advantage of giving is not the same as giving because you want to give and help others. I think that there's a nuanced difference there, so that it's important to keep in mind that giving, you'll have more inside, you'll have more, as you said, you actually become wealthier as you're able to give. And as another side note, my grandmother always said, you can't give yourself poor. So it's always important to just give freely as you can to others, because it will come back to you.
I think I have quotes at the beginning of every chapter, and I think the beginning of that chapter is, nobody ever became poor from giving, and that was from Anne Frank.
Anne Frank, fantastic person to quote. And I'm shocked when I read the book about how brilliant she was at such a young age. So it's a good plug for anyone who hasn't read the Diary of Anne Frank to go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're going to be winding down the conversation now. It's been a lot of fun having you. I've got one more question about your book, and then we're going to dive into our last 2 questions I ask all of my guests. One thing I really loved about this book, because this book is geared towards, families and kids, although once again, it's fantastic for adults. I loved it. It's changed my mindset. Even if you don't have kids, read it yourself, put it in your library at your school, put it in your classroom library. I'd highly recommend that all of you get a copy of the book, buy it for yourself, ask your principal to buy it for you, ask the librarian to request it, whatever it is. There's lots of ways you can get your hand on this book without you having to pay for it as well, and get more people to be able to read it. Get it in that graphic novel section that we all know is constantly being checked out at the library. So there's lots of uses for this book, but it's definitely got that, children passing it on undertone, and it's about generational wealth. But what I love about it is, like, the parents don't give their kid money, right? It's not like, okay, we made millions of dollars, don't waste it. It's, all right, I went on a journey and I learned all about money, and now I'm going to send you on this journey too. That's the premise of the book. So why is giving your child knowledge such an important concept? And why did you choose that as the foundation of the book?
We see that it's, entitlement is a very tricky thing, and we want our children to have a better life than us. It's very hard as parents to not just give them everything we want, like everything we can, but truly, empowerment is always going to be more valuable than entitlement. And so if we can teach our kids, just like that famous phrase, teach a man to fish and he eats for life, eats his entire life, and give a man a fish and he eats for a night. I think I messed that up a little bit, but basic premise, it's just so important. And I also really want to have that intergenerational wealth in there, but again, plant the seed of, hey, it doesn't even have to wait for a generation. Pass this knowledge on to your friends and your family and other people. Like, just pass the knowledge on, because in the same way compounding works, this message works the same way. So if it can be passed on and everyone passes this message on to 2 other people, that'll grow and change the way we think about money. And that really is my goal. It's, I love to impact individuals, but if I can impact an entire generation, I mean, that's what I'm trying to achieve.
Awesome. You know what, David, it has been so fun talking to you about your book. I loved it, and I hope that all the teachers that are listening to this, that read this book, are going to love it too. I know that you will, and I know that as we get this message out, it'll spread. You know, you giving me this book will hopefully spread the message. Hopefully all the schools in the entire United States will get a copy of this book now, and you giving will come back to you. And you know, as we continue to give this knowledge, it'll go on to our students and just spread throughout the world. So I really believe in the power of this message and the positive habits and psychology that you're preaching in this book, which I think are massively more important than the math. All right, as we're wrapping it down, we've got 2 more questions. First question: what is your number 1 tip for teachers to have a richer wallet, classroom, and life?
It's got to be the mindset. It's how you think. So if I think even back when you're talking about like teachers and being rich and what it means to them or having more, again, if we flip it on this conversation with awesome stuff, it all comes down to choice. Why did you become a teacher? So rather than thinking I'm a teacher and I have nothing and financially, and I chose this poor route. No, you have these children in your lives. You have this impact. You have these long summer breaks. You have all these other things. And if that's your choice, that's your awesome stuff. Like it's as simple as that. It's a choice. And you chose that path for a reason. And so owning it and feeling that empowerment, I mean, you're going to feel richer immediately.
I love it. I love it. Owning the choice that you made to be a teacher and feel richer just because you have a life of your choosing. That is actually more than a lot of people can say about their life. They feel trapped in a life that they're in. So just own what you have and enjoy it. Feel richer as a result. Great advice. Great advice. Let's say a teacher wants to know more about the awesome stuff. How can they get in contact with you?
The easiest way is the website, theawesomestuff.com. And as you're talking, like, I'd love to get into schools. I'd love to come to schools and talk to the kids. I'm working right now on a workbook for teachers and students. So any way that we can get this message into the schools and I can help with that, reach out directly. I mean, for me, this is all a passion project. So any way I can get it in front of more students and create more impact, I'm going to do whatever I can to make that happen.
Awesome. Well, David, it's been a fun conversation talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully, it makes these teachers just listen to the conversation, live richer lives. I mean, that's the goal.
If you'd like to come on the podcast for coaching, to share an expert opinion, or just to talk about a topic you think is relevant, I'd love to talk to you. Just fill out the form at teachermoneyshow.com/guest. I look forward to talking with you.